Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. There is a literal orgy of insane news today. Europe's leading rabbi says let Jews carry guns for protection. That's out of Newsmax. Hey, Rabbi, I got a better idea. How about everybody in Europe's able to carry guns, including felons? Because felons are going to carry guns anyways, so I don't want any gun laws. Any gun laws other than private property. People should be able to restrict it on their private property if they see fit. Back in the old days, even 60, 70 years ago, in fact, before the 68 Gun Control Act, when you got out of prison, if you'd been arrested with a gun at the time and you owned it, they would give you your gun back. Famously, what is it in High Plains Drifter with Clint Eastwood? When they let the bad guys out of the jail at the beginning of the movie, they give them their guns. That's how it really worked, because a criminal's going to have a gun anyways. You don't take somebody's horse and you don't take somebody's gun. That's why you could be executed for stealing somebody's horse, because somebody could die if you took their horse. Now, Hollywood sells the image of Wild Wild West high crime. If you actually study the first 100 years of U.S. history, other than wars and infighting, crime was very, very low because most people were armed. And you certainly didn't have people's houses getting robbed. But Europe's leading rabbi let Jews carry guns for protection. Well, the head of Interpol said last year, which I thought was amazing, because Interpol's pretty corrupt in my view, when radical Islamists continue to attack shopping malls around the world, including Kenya, he said that it's now time for law-abiding citizens to be able to have concealed carry and to be armed. That will stop this. And that's absolutely true. Imagine if these Islamists would have tried to attack the average business in, say, Texas, where maybe 20% of people are concealed carry. It would look like trying to rob a police station instead of a bank. You would get your butt shot off. A prominent Jewish organization in Europe is petitioning the European Union to allow members of the Jewish community to carry guns for the essential protection of their communities. That won't be allowed, because if that idea came, well, then other people are going to want it, right? But see, the feminists say women shouldn't have guns, because a woman being empowered to protect themselves, that's not feminist. Of course, it's completely feminist. It's beyond feminist. It's human. See, they want your guns to enslave you. And I know our listeners know that, but the general public still doesn't completely get it. They're starting to. The system arms to the teeth while telling us we should turn our guns in. The European Jewish Association is pressing for new legislation that would change the gun license laws, which are basically impossible in Europe to get guns, after a series of deadly attacks on Jews across Europe. Most recently during the Paris terrorist hostage siege, which killed 4 Jews in the kosher market. Yeah, in Israel, pretty much anybody can get an M16 to protect themselves. And they arm the settlers and everybody else. But then the ADL lobbies to take guns of American people. So I think what's good for Israel or Switzerland is good for us. Switzerland has the lowest crime rate in the world, and every military-age person has to own a gun, and then after that, there's tax incentives to own guns. And when you're part of the militia, they do home inspections to make sure your guns are hidden in case a foreign enemy ever took over. And they have weapons caches in redoubts all over the hills and mountains where citizens can get in to caches of full auto, grenade launchers, you name it. And by the way, Switzerland has one of the smallest militaries in the world, and for 500 years, no one will invade them. 450-something years. The story of William Tell is true. We had to do a report on William Tell that shot the apple off with the crossbow. They really made him do that. And then he got mad and went and killed a bunch of the police who were Austrian-Hungarian Empire, basically, had taken over Switzerland. And he started an uprising that overthrew them. That's why Switzerland became the model of us in 1776. Switzerland itself was imitating the free areas of the Netherlands previously, where the private business owners had to guard their own businesses at their ports from pirates. And so if you had a little port, you would have your own garrison, your own cannons, your own weapons. So the Netherlands and Switzerland is where we get this from. And if you study William Tell, then you know the rest of the story. And so that's why they have the lowest crime rate in the world, and they're armed to the teeth with armored redoubts, big steel doors they have keys to. They can trust their citizens, and they can open it up, and there's food and weapons and huge caches. And guess what? Nobody ever robs them.
Hey, Alex, I've actually been to Switzerland, and I've seen the armored redoubts. I've seen the tank blockades as you drive through these little villages.
Yeah, for folks that don't know, the people have the tanks. In fact, you live there, what, for 6 months?
6 months back in the 90s. And
working on a ski resort. Tell folks about it. I'm glad you brought this up.
Well, it's interesting. And I thought it was, they had these tank blockades
as you're
driving
through. This is Rob Dew, the news director, speaking. More and more, we're going to just have the crew chime in when they've got interesting points. I've told them to do that. So Dew, spend a few minutes talking about Switzerland.
Sure. I went to Switzerland back in the early 90s, and what I thought was amazing was one, when we stayed on the ski resort, we go down into town, and we had a place to stay in there, and it was a bomb shelter. Huge, probably 2-foot thick steel door. You go inside there, it had cots and stuff, but then they had storage units for people. Every one of them had a machine gun, a helmet. These guys, they were ready. And I thought back at the time, I was probably a little more liberal than I am now, and definitely not as pro-gun. And I was like, oh, why are they allowed to have all these guns? And I asked one of the bartenders there, and they said, we're armed. We're armed. That's why nobody invades us. And then as you're going through the countryside, you see these concrete barriers that they had left over from World War II. They just keep them. They're set up. And you're not going to get any heavy armor. You're not going to get any tanks into Switzerland. Or you're not going to get very far, definitely. And you're going to be shot at by people. And there was also, they had trees. Their missile silos are disguised as giant trees up in the mountains. The Swiss are ready for anything, and that's why nobody invades them, and that's why they're able to remain neutral, and that's why they have.
And it's because 400 plus years ago they got taken over, and they kicked the enemy out after 60-something years of occupation, and 400 plus years later, they're the richest, safest country in the world, and they've built new tank redoubts all over the country as well, and they are ready, and that's why nobody dared invade them.
Yeah, we got them up right now. That's exactly what it looked like. And it was amazing everywhere. And a lot of people that lived in the cities had little shacks that they would go to on the weekends and have gardens. The Swiss are definitely, they know what it's about. They know about nature. They know about the Second Amendment, and they know about freedom. And unfortunately, they live in socialist Europe, so they have some of those programs there, but it's a very clean place.
And they're trying to get rid of it. They're trying to get rid of the cantons. The reason they're successful, and again, we're partially based on this, also the Iroquois Nation gave a lot to the Constitution, Bill of Rights. Jefferson talked about that. The Swiss system as well. They have their cantons that are their states that then go and meet, and the leaders of the cantons meet and are the federal government. Just like we, in the past, would send U.S. senators were elected by the legislature, they were creatures of the state. They could be recalled, and the states ran the country. Well, in 1913, at the same time they gave us the private Federal Reserve and the collection agency, the IRS, they got rid of that and made senators be popularly elected, making them then their own little kings. And so we need to go back to our Swiss roots and our Iroquois roots, because the Iroquois Confederation and others were some of the most successful natives and didn't have as much warring, because they would have all their sub-tribes, elect leaders who would then go vote. So again, that's what we come from. Native American and Swiss and Dutch systems fused together. Not Greek democracy. We do not come from Greek democracy. That is a lie. Greek democracy was a bucket for black stones and a bucket for white stones. It was only in a few of their states. And if they didn't like what you said, the elite got to vote, not the average man, not the average woman. In fact, most men were slaves. Greeks were slaves. Slavery was just across the board. But the higher up elite would get to go vote. If they didn't like what you said, they'd go vote. And they would, black stones would be a no vote, white stones a yes vote. And if there were more black stones than white stones on a vote to kill you, then they wouldn't kill you. But if there were more white stones, they would kill you. Then they'd vote on how to kill you. That's a democracy where if 51% votes to say make black people slaves again, black people are slaves again. If in a democracy, if they vote to take from people that have good health records and have been paying their insurance and double your prices to then pay off insurance companies, it happens. But in a republic, I don't care if 90% of people vote to make black people slaves and put them in a field and put a rope around their neck and make them pull plows. The black folks or the white folks or anybody else that's being oppressed have a right to say no and fight to defend themselves, because in a republic, you can't vote to take somebody's private property or make them live like you want them to or follow your God or not follow your God. This is what America is, and they will not tell us. They lie, and they tell us it comes from the Greeks. And I'm not bashing the Greeks. Some of the philosophy, culture, and architecture does, and it contributed to the Renaissance overall. But our system is Swiss and Iroquois. It is not Greek, and it's a giant lie that we are a Grecian democracy. We are not a Grecian democracy. And again, Greece at one time had more than 20 kingdoms, depending on which period of the Greeks. So you could find any system you wanted in the Greek system. And I've kind of gone off on a rant here, dude. It's just that the average American does not know where we came from. Well, Jefferson told us the Swiss and the Iroquois is where he came up with the Constitution, along with Magna Carta. So it's a fusion of English common law, Iroquois, and Swiss ideas, and we just need to know what our American roots are. But isn't it interesting that they don't want Hispanics to feel included in Texas, even though the Constitution was written by the Hispanic founder? More than 35% of the people that voted in the first legislature were Hispanic. They want to exclude Hispanics from being part of Texas culture when they're at the very heart of it. And they want to exclude Native Americans out of the Constitution, and that they were the main model, even above the Swiss. Isn't that interesting, dude?
It's very interesting. And when that was one of the things Russell Means talked about when we went to visit him. He's like, did you know that? Did you know that your Constitution's based off Iroquois law? And it's amazing that they don't teach kids that. They teach kids, and you hear everybody say that we're a democracy, we're a democracy, we're a constitutional republic, and people don't realize that because it's not taught to kids, and it's sad. And there's a New York Times article bringing up Iroquois Constitution, a forerunner to colonist democratic principles.
But see, they lie and call it democratic principles.
Yeah.
No, it's a limited democracy in that you can do whatever you want as long as you don't hurt somebody else. But the majority cannot vote to take the rights of a minority, and the minority rights and the majority rights are all codified, and those are the rules of the game. You cannot violate them. And the minute you violate them, you're now in a mob rule tyranny. And that's what we have, where special interest, the IRS, the White House can engage in any crime they want, and they're above the law. But the IRS can tell some old lady who's 85 years old, 10 years ago, we think you underpaid $1,000. And so, with interest, it's now $50,000. And then they drain the old woman's bank account, make her sell her house, throw her out on the street. And we stand for this as a society? We put up with this garbage? This is pure bull. The IRS has written the rules on record to screw everyone over where it's impossible. And now the New York Times reports that law lets IRS seize accounts on suspicion, no crime, no charges, of people with no criminal records because they deposit cash. Ever. You ever deposit under $1,000? Well, she didn't make $1,000 a day with her small restaurant she had for 40 years. They took her life savings, $33,000 that she had receipts on. They don't care. This is tyranny. This is evil. This is what was happening in William Tell's time in Switzerland. In fact, do remind me, I want to do a special report on William Tell. It's riveting stuff.
Yeah.
And again, where's the movie about William Tell? Where's the movie about the Iroquois Nation? Where's the movie about Magna Carta?
Where's the movie about George Washington? You know,
Where
like
is it? It's
George
all
Washington.
so epic when you read the real history books that you cannot believe it. It's so epic. America,
I think that's part of our job, is to retell the history that they're trying to hide and that they don't teach kids anymore. It's literally, there's a dark period in when America was first being formed that they don't teach kids.
And of course, America had a lot of problems and a lot of swashbuckling and a lot of battles and evil and 6 different empires trying to take over this open area and all the different native tribes getting different groups that want to double cross each other. People are people. We all act the same.
Well, there's always going to be evil. It's our job to stand up to it and point out when it's wrong.
Absolutely.
And we shouldn't be afraid to do it.
Absolutely. So I've covered about 10 articles so far. Just look at this. How about the Jewish group comes out and says, let's arm everybody in France? I mean, what's going to happen if France says, okay, if you're Jewish, you can have a gun, but nobody else can? Isn't that discrimination? But see, under political correctness, if you're a protected minority, you get rights that other people don't. But I think it's a great idea, and I agree with the head of Interpol saying it's time to arm people. That will put an end to this very, very quick. Now, let's continue here. 4 top Secret Service executives told to leave their post in agency shakeup. This is a persecution, ladies and gentlemen. Let me give you a little news flash. There have been members of the Secret Service that have always been visiting hookers. I don't care what, doctors, lawyers, auto mechanics. There's a percentage of every profession that sees hookers. I mean, that's been going on since before civilization, okay? They use that as this big deal to now persecute a bunch of people in the agency who, again, if they were going after them for real corruption, like the CIA, blackmailing Congress and hacking their computers, they've now investigated themselves and says it's fine, then I'd say, yeah, go after the Secret Service. This is the same White House persecuting the military, persecuting Petraeus right now over a girlfriend. Oh, let's indict him over a girlfriend. This is the same Justice Department that is openly running Fast and Furious, covering up Benghazi, covering up all these big banks and corporations that are tax exempt. This is the same Justice Department that is engaged in IRS persecution in a reign of terror that makes Richard Nixon look like an angel cake. They just are in no position to be involved in any of this. But that shows you there's a major purge going on. Charges recommended against Petraeus, former mistress for North Carolina, under investigation. Again, I'm not saying it's good he was doing whatever he was doing, but you can have foreign banks signing us on to 2 trillion, 2 quadrillion, 2,000 trillion. We can have all this, the president becoming a dictator, opening the borders, a secret plan to legalize all the illegals, issue 40 million green cards, on and on and on. None of that's an issue. It's Petraeus had a girlfriend. Now, it'd have been like the royal family, and it'd have been like a 10-year-old boy that he killed, then he wouldn't be in trouble. It's a crime. He's with a woman. I don't like communism. I don't like Fidel Castro. The conservative Cuban community is one of the most pro-liberty groups out there. That said, I do want to open Cuba up, because opening it up to trade and opening it up now after 60-plus years, or almost 60 years, whatever it is, since the embargo's been in there since like 61, so I mean, do your math. I guess it is over 60 years. Since all of this has been going on, Obama has now eased them, but it's selective. And I warned of this. This is the crony capitalist model. It's why they like to partner with dictatorships, where they will now allow select corporations and groups in, and will still then selectively prosecute people. So it's not safe to go to Cuba under this. We knew this was coming. This is the model. They will allow selective groups, selective corporations to operate, and not generally. You either totally open it up or you don't open it up at all. That's my view. Opening it up would cause the communist dictatorship to fall over time. I don't think it would still be there if they wouldn't have done this, but it's just another bad move. I mean, it's like Obama offering free tuition. Turns out it massively increases the prices, just like Obamacare was supposed to be free. It's all screw jobs on top of screw jobs. Stay with us. In the past decade, we have witnessed unparalleled scientific discoveries in the area of health. But no one has put together a formula that focuses directly on brain health, nerve growth factors, and optimizing your cellular energy at the same time. DNA Force is one of the most expensive formulas to produce. Some of the ingredients in DNA Force are $12,000 a kilogram. We are using the coveted, patented, only American source of PQQ, CoQ10, and more. You want the best that's out there at the lowest price anywhere? Well, we're bringing you a total win-win. The ultimate value, cutting-edge, trailblazing game changer that also supports the InfoWar. We have produced a limited run of DNA Force, and it will take up to 12 weeks to produce more once we sell out. Secure your DNA Force today at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. DNA Force from InfoWars Life.